Okay, well on the nose, it doesn't smell like it's
You just said the nose was the same, bro. Don't backtrack now.
What did I say?
You said they smell exactly the same. Roll the tape back.
This smells exactly what I brought for you. You call bullshit?
Yeah. But most of what comes out of your mouth is bullshit, so. Relying on scientific names, more often than not, leads to an oversimplification of what we're truly consuming.
If you're gonna ask a question, may it be one about their experience and their history. I think that's where we really stand to gain, indigenous knowledge, right? And that's super valuable. Well, the font for Tepestate is larger.
Yeah. And does size matter?
It depends on the context. So, I don't know what you're getting at, Chu.
So in case this podcast reaches Madam President of Mexico, you now know Chuey and Fred's perspective on what you should do for the agave industry. I think we should stop calling agaves by their scientific names.
Well, tell us why. I think you're dead wrong.
Dead wrong. Dead wrong. I feel very much alive in my opinion, Fred.
All right. Well, explain.
My main contention is that the scientific names don't really tell us as much as we think they do, and that they're often a distraction from truly appreciating the mezcal that's in front of us, and that by just referring to them as their local names, that actually is going to tune us into more of the culture, history, and people behind the spirit that we're consuming.
So I can appreciate the point about you can learn more about the culture and perhaps a bit more about the history and the etymology of that common name. But I entirely disagree with the idea that we don't know as much as we do by using the scientific name. Like, that is the essence of what we've come to know. And if we actually appreciate the biodiversity that we've come to recognize in the genus of agave, then we would not necessarily exclusively focus on the scientific name, but really focus on it because that's where we know the most, is in the science.
Yeah, I guess for me, my struggle is like mezcal it has such a history and a culture in terms of production, right? And for the longest time, and I think even to some extent today, producers don't concern themselves with the scientific variety. And I'm not saying, every producer doesn't care. But I think across the board, it's not a super high priority in the production of mezcal on terms of what is the scientific determination or the scientific name of different agave species that are being worked with. And what I've seen personally is that people, I think, get too caught up in what the scientific name is. And I completely understand it because the world of mezcal and the world of agave spirits in general is so big that we have to try to our brains are trying to make sense of it, right? And how do we make sense of it and consolidate it down into somewhat digestible information? But at the same time, I think relying on scientific names more often than not leads to an oversimplification of what we're truly consuming.
So how is it an oversimplification?
I think, and I'm not saying that there's individuals that don't think beyond this, but from my experience, right, people rely on the scientific name to group their agaves as the same thing, right? But if we think about Oaxaca specifically, right, you have the quiche, Madrecuiche, Bicuiche, right? Cereal, all Karwinskis, but they're not all the same thing, right? Like there's beyond just being referred to as something differently in a colloquial name or in a local name, they're also, they produce different tasting mezcals. And I think even beyond that, if we look at like Mexico as a whole, right? And we think of like agave angustifolia, which is espadín, as we know it in Oaxaca, right? But then to have a simple, like, I think I've talked to many people that are then like, when we talk about like a producer in Jalisco, like with the Partida family and the brand Chacolo, they're like, oh, they mostly produce with angustifolia. Like, it's mostly espadín. And it's like, well, I think that's an oversimplification because
Well,
while
which,
both,
which part is the oversimplification? The
yeah,
angustifolia or the espadín?
I think the angustifolia is in the way that people process this information because they're equating an angustifolia espadín from the Central Valley of Oaxaca as being the same or at least very similar to angustifolia from Zapotitlan de Vadillo, Jalisco. And
But they also wouldn't be wrong.
from what perspective? From a scientific perspective. But in terms of flavor, in terms of what those agave, the size of those agaves, in terms of the regional terroir from those agaves, in terms of subvarietal versions of those agaves, I think they are like those are very distinct agaves that produce very distinct mezcals.
Right. And so I guess just to make sure that I understand what you're saying, the use of scientific names to categorize agaves is reductionist because it sort of doesn't take into account the regional terroir and production methods and hence flavor profile that we might miss out on if we're just thinking about a scientific name.
Yeah, I think it's often used for consumers. And when I say, I don't say this like from a point of like, these people are wrong and I'm right. I say it more as a person that like also at one point in time heavily relied on scientific names of agaves in order to try to understand what I was drinking and like how all of these different agaves are connected, right? But I think it does lead us to an oversimplification because when we think about like scientific species versus subvarietals, right? Like scientific species, that's an independent species from something else, right? So you have agave, which is like this broad category, right? And within agave, we know that there's 40, 50 plus. There's no hard number, and the term that in the amount that can be used to produce what we call as mezcal from Mexico, right?
So there's actually 200 plus species, right?
Sure.
In Mexico.
In Mexico, how many are used for mezcal production? 200 plus, maybe. I'm not making a contention there. There's a lot.
Right? No, I think you got it right, that there's not a hard number about how many are actually.
Okay. And so, and then within those species, there's also subvarieties, right? Like that's when you think of like, okay, think of Oaxaca and think of Karwinski agaves and then think of the sub-varieties within that, right? And the different sub-varieties of Karwinski that we have access to and that we've tasted. But when we think about like, and the disclaimer here is I'm no expert in wine or grapes. But from my understanding, right, like when we think of the wine world, which mezcal often gets compared to, but I think that's a different conversation. The wine world, you have different grapes, right?
What do you mean different grapes?
Like how do we differentiate wine, right? You have a Pinot Noir, you have a Cabernet Sauvignon.
And what are those?
You have a.
What are those names though?
Right, those are subvarietals of grape.
But they're not different species.
They're not different species. They're all the same species, right? Or at least that's my understanding.
Yeah.
And you're under the same understanding, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So that's all the same species, and then there are different subvarietals of grape under that, which has created an entire worldwide industry, long-standing, hundreds and thousands of years.
Those are globally standardized.
Right.
those names.
But they're subvarietals of the same species, right?
Uh, I don't know that they're subvarietals. I think that they're called what are they called? Cultivars.
They're the same species, right?
They're the same species, yeah.
Right. Okay. So then when we talk about mezcal, right? We just talked about agave. 200 species of agave exist within Mexico alone. And we have to know that there's subvarietals or whatever you want to call it, right? Different versions within those same species
Right.
of plants that I mean, a Pinot Noir does not taste like a Cabernet
Right.
and does not taste like a Chardonnay. Those are all distinctly different. But you never like walk into a wine tasting and you're like, but what's the scientific name? Like,
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
no. I'm glad that you brought up wine. That's exactly the category that I started thinking about when I thought about this episode, and I was surprised to discover that there's just one and possibly two actual species of grapes that are used in wine production. And please forgive me if we're
neither of us
totally
are claiming to be experts in wine.
wrong here. And neither of us are scientists.
No.
Right. And so we're talking from experience and from the knowledge that we've gained in the industry over the past several years. But I think it does lend us some insight into sort of where the agave industry or category sort of is going and is currently as compared to the wine category, because whereas wine just has the one species, we know that agave has 200 plus. And I agree, we're it's not likely that mezcal is produced from probably more than 50 different agaves. But going back to your very first point about appreciating the biodiversity of agave, and within the context of Mexico, then I think that we really do have to focus on the progress that we've made in the scientific categorization and classification of these different agave species. That's the only way that we can continue to preserve that biodiversity and allow it to flourish. Otherwise, if we're just going by these common names, that one common name could refer to 2 or 3 different species.
Sure.
Any
we were
can
in
go
Puebla
by
together
4 or
earlier
5
this year.
different names. Right. Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And,
but
and we're like, the local name Jabalí
yeah.
is used. I think David mentioned 14 species of agave that they can locally refer to as Jabalí.
Right, and that's why that's not helpful. Then how are we going to...
Why is it not helpful?
Well, okay, great example. So on that same trip, I think you and I both learned for the first time, at least for me, about a species of agave called Agave Quiotepecensis.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very curious about it. And we learned that colloquially it's called Rabo de Leon. And I asked David about any other common names, and he said that it doesn't have any other common names. Although I spoke to someone else that was on that trip, and he said that he heard that same species was referred to also as jabalí.
Sure, wouldn't surprise me.
And it would, yeah, based on what you said, that would not come as a shock to me either. And so, if we were interested in preserving agave quiotepecensis specifically, because that genetic makeup was considered, endangered, then how would we know if we were just referring to it as jabalí when we went to harvest?
That's fair. I think my contention is more that like mezcal drinkers and the consumers of mezcal really need to stop narrowing in and paying so much attention to scientific names and really focus more on what I think is more important, which is the local name, and really appreciating mezcal for the people, culture, and like community that produces it. And the scientific name really does nothing to get you into that. And to me, that's what makes mezcal so like, I mean, that's why I'm here, right? Like that's why I drink. That's why I started the club. That's why I'm on this like journey of like continuing education for myself, but then also sharing as much knowledge as I can with people. It's not because of the biodiversity of agave, and I think the biodiversity of agave is important, right? Um, but like I I don't think it's the most important thing, and I think that consumers as a whole focus too much on that scientific name, and oftentimes that leads to an oversimplification, right? They think when they first hear, like they're like, what is chacolo? Never heard of it. Like never heard of mezcal from Jalisco, right? And then they're like, they see the bottle and they're like, oh, it's angustifolia. And in their mind, they instantly equate it to espadin. And I have nothing against espadin, but the espadin from Oaxaca is not the same as Azul Cruz from Zapotitlan de Vedillo.
To them, I would say, great. It's not for you. Keep drinking, the wild espadín that you so desire.
Wild?
Sure. I mean, it seems like the consumer that you were trying to describe is someone on a journey that no longer appreciates the diversity within espadín.
I don't think so. I don't think that they would agree with you on that. I think that they, because it's not just espadín, right? Like if you're like, madre cuiche, and bicuiche are all the same thing.
Well, they're not wrong, and I think
But why are they different?
So there's a lot I think to appreciate about what you're suggesting, and personally, I think that, or I also had a similar experience and continue to learn and appreciate the diversity of the regional common names, some of which I just learned about while preparing for this podcast. So, if folks are not familiar with this resource, it is Mezcales y Diversidad from the Comisión Nacional para el Conocimiento y Uso de la Biodiversidad, from CONABIO, from the Mexican government. It sponsors the research in this diversity. And so, like, it was awesome to look at this, because not only are we learning common names, we're also learning some of these indigenous names that the Zapotecs and the Nahuatls gave to these plants, and some of which are still used today, which I think is fascinating, like the papalote, which I think is the most common of these names. Agave cupriata also goes by papalometo, maguey mariposa. And so papalometo in Nahuatl means maguey mariposa. And then in Mixteco is yabadensi or yabadenisi. Also goes by ancho, cimarron, maguey de mezcal, and tuchi. Agave tepestate, or the agave we know as tepestate. In Zapoteco goes by ducual. In Nahuatl goes by pichomel, also known as maguey de caballo, curandero. And the list goes on. I mean, you know about a lot of these. So I don't think any of this is particularly new. But so to your point here about the Karwinskis, that's the scientific name. In Chontal, al malbiquish, also known as biquish, dobsidial, madrequiche, dobasiche in Zapoteco, cachutum, barril, and cereal. So these are a single species, and we referred to them sometimes, I think, as subspecies, and that might be the case. But often we don't really know whether they're actually subspecies or simply a regional common name. And I think that, like, along this line of thought, when we compare, the agave species category to the wine category, it's awesome that the wine category has like that international standardization of the cultivar. I think that because the agave category is so relatively new, um, that this explosion, if you will, in the growth in knowledge of these species. I think I read that about 45 new, quote unquote, new species had been discovered in the previous 4 years to the article I read from, like, I want to say it was like maybe, I don't know, not it was in the 2020s, and so that implies that we're continuing at a fairly rapid pace to sort of discover these new species,
Sure.
and and these are wild species, right? We're not talking about cultivars, right? Cultivar meaning that um, these are intentionally, specifically cultivated, from seed, or however, the plant is germinated and cultivated, that it's intentional, and perhaps that is the way that the agave category will go. But um, we only will have the ability to go in that direction if we have that scientific knowledge, and it's super valuable and interesting to have conversations with the mezcaleros. um, I, that's my favorite part of my agave journey and my experience. But as we take a more macro level perspective on the industry, and also if we have the desire to protect the biodiversity that I described earlier, then it's absolutely essential that we have that scientific knowledge base.
Yeah, I agree. So in terms of that though, like I don't disagree that there's value in the scientific name. I just think that the value is it's not as valuable as the local name in terms of helping consumers of mezcal understand what they're drinking and appreciate what they're drinking.
Wrong.
Wrong.
Yeah,
Okay.
consumers want more knowledge, not less. The cultivars in the wine category give them that specific knowledge, right? When you go to the store and you want a Chardonnay, you know what you're getting.
Hmm.
Uh, if you go to the market,
So if I go to the market,
hang on, let me finish this point. If you go to the market and you're looking to get a coyote and you find a coyote, but that's all you know, then you have no clue whether that agave is Americana or some other, species of agave that is just, using that common name, perhaps for marketing purposes.
see, my challenge to that is like if I walked into uh, a bar or a market and asked for uh, an angustifolia, and they gave me an angustifolia, I think my follow up question is like, where is this from, right?
Yeah.
Is this an angustifolia from from where, right? And that's because that's really going to tell me what it is. It'd just be like, oh, it's an angustifolia. That doesn't that tells me scientifically what species it is, but it doesn't tell me much, right? Just like when you go into if you go to order wine and I don't even know what the fuck they call this scientific species of grape, but I want that. And it's like, okay, well, every single wine on this list is that, but they're all different wines, right? And so, like, how do we come to appreciate terroir and the regionality of production and what that means for us as consumers without also appreciating the local names and what they tell us and what regionality tells us about these spirits, right? And I agree, like it's great for the wine world that there's these agreed upon standards of like this is what a Cabernet Sauvignon is, this is what a Pinot Noir is, whether it's from Oregon or from France, whatever it is, right? But we've already seen that start to happen or try to happen in the agave world. And we've seen resistance from producers, right? When we think about like the Comercam or other certifying agencies of the denomination of origin for mezcal, and what they determine is this agave and what it can be referred to as. We've seen producers like Real Minero comes to mind as a big one, who are pushing back against what the Comercam or the certifying agency is telling them that they would have to refer to an agave as because of what the scientific test says, and saying we would rather not certify under this denomination of origin than change the way we refer to this agave.
Wait, let me be clear. I'm not sure I understood that point. Is it... So my understanding is that the CRM says to someone that if they want to certify an agave marmorata,
Sure.
that they had to use the common name Quepestate.
So, along those lines, yes.
Okay, so I did not...
From my understanding,
I'm
that's
not
what I've
aware.
heard.
So my only knowledge of what's required on the labeling with regard to the species of agave going on the label of anything that's certified as mezcal is the scientific name, to prevent any confusion of what's going into the market, as opposed to what's being sold locally. And so I think maybe we have some homework to do.
When you think of like Santa Catarina, Minas as a mezcal producing region, right? In Minas, for example, specifically, when you think of agave quiche or quiche, what do we typically think of in Oaxaca for that agave, that local name?
In where? In Minas?
In all of Oaxaca. If you heard, hey, Fred, try this quiche, what are you in your mind thinking that it is?
Karwinski?
Right. But in Minas, it's not. In Minas, it's a Rotacanta and it's Mexicano.
Right.
Right.
And that's confusing.
For us.
Well, and for anyone that's not from Minas, or that doesn't actually know that already.
Right. So I guess my contention is consuming for us as consumers who are trying to understand agave or mezcal at a global level. But I think we learn more and we can appreciate more what we're actually consuming when we take it at face value of what the producer's telling us that they see it as. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I think you're wrong.
Like for example, like if I'm sitting down with Lalo Gonzalez and he's like,
Lalo who?
Gonzalez.
Who's that?
Oh, not Lalo Gonzalez. Lalo from La Locura.
Okay.
Lalo Angeles.
Yeah. Okay.
Lalo Gonzalez is from Tequila. Anyways, if I'm sitting down with Lalo Angeles.
Do you want to
like,
say that again?
This is quiche, right? No, I don't care if they cut it out. And this is quiche. And I'm like, well, you mean it's Rotacanta? And he's like, yeah, it's quiche. And you're like, well, it's actually Rotacanta, which we would locally refer to as Mexicana.
And at no point in my argument am I suggesting that we correct any mezcalero or try to.
But people do. And it's not necessarily like that they're correcting them. They're trying to understand, right? They're trying to put things into buckets that they understand. And in that process, they lose out. That's my argument. They're losing out on so much information because when they hear about an agave or they hear an agave referred to as a local name and they're drinking something, they immediately are looking to classify it into a certain scientific category so that they can try to better understand what they think they're drinking. And in that process, they lose out on so much because if you just shut up and listen, right?
I agree with that.
So, and this is related, but it's a little bit of a tangent, I guess. But like, when I go to Mexico, I a lot of times I travel alone. I travel solo, right? And in certain situations, more recently, I've had the opportunity to travel with groups, whether those are my group, like a group of people, friends that I bring, or a group that I'm put into by somebody else, right? And a lot of times, especially like when if it's people that I already know on these groups, at some point during the trip, they come up to me and they say, "Are you feeling okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I feel great. Why?" They're like, "Well, you're just a little quieter than normal." And I'm like, "Yeah, because I when I'm visiting with producers, my goal is to shut up and listen. Like they have forgotten more about mezcal and agave spirits than I'll ever know. And so what I've learned is sometimes my questions, like there's like saying like there's no dumb questions. There are dumb questions. And most of them come from us as consumers, right? Just shut up and listen. Like listen to what they have to say. And like digest that later. But like if as soon as they say like this is agave coyote, if I'm like, well, is it Americana or is it Leoba? I've immediately changed the direction of the conversation into a scientific categorization that realistically does not matter.
I agree.
It doesn't matter. But if I would have just shut up and listened,
Who knows where that comes
who knows what they would have said after this is agave coyote. And so I guess that's my contention is like, stop caring what category it falls into scientifically. We can figure that out later. You can understand that later. Shut up and listen. Like try to understand what you are actually consuming and the people and the culture and the tradition behind it.
I agree. And I think that, again, if our interest writ large is to preserve that culture and that learning, then it behooves us to arrive at a standardization, because otherwise there's no way to protect it. And absolutely, I can't stand when I'm visiting with a producer and there are these questions about things that you know are
They don't matter,
that don't really matter.
but they make
Right.
they make whoever's asking the question feel like they know something,
Sure.
right?
It may be genuine curiosity.
I
You
get
know,
that,
I,
but
I give people the
yeah.
benefit of the doubt. And I mean, I don't know that. I think that's the lesson that I would want people to take away is absolutely when you're visiting a producer, the species of the agave should not matter. You should shut up and listen
Yeah.
and follow their train of thought. If you're going to ask a question, may it be one about their experience and their history and their truth. I think that's where we really stand to gain, indigenous knowledge, right? And that's super valuable. I think that's the kind of stuff that, is being documented
Yeah.
and is valuable. And that is what allows us to abstract to this standardization eventually. The category is just not there yet.
I guess. Well, maybe I'll save that. But is standardization the goal?
Well,
And I think that's a question I want to dive into. But I'm also out of mezcal, so I want to ask for a refill. But before I do, I have to ask you, what the fuck am I drinking?
I have no clue what you're drinking because I'm pretty sure that our copitas were swapped because this smells exactly what I brought for you.
Really?
Yeah, and I think that you would have known if you got what I brought for you. Because try this.
Obviously, you didn't like it very much.
No,
Not that-
I enjoyed
Fred's glass, my glass. Yeah.
it. I had some earlier.
Uh-huh.
Have some water.
Our glasses were not switched.
Did we both bring each other Tepestate?
No. But that is a tepestate, what I'm drinking. What you're drinking is not a tepestate.
What you had was a Tepestate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Spicy green, like that green, like serrano pepper, like, and it's fucking delicious. And this is definitely tepestate. That's what I was thinking the whole time. That is not a tepestate.
Okay, well on the nose it doesn't smell like Tepestate. It was on the palate.
You just said the nose was the same, bro. Don't backtrack now.
What did I say?
You
I
said
the
they
nose?
smell exactly the same. Roll the tape back.
This smells exactly what I brought for you. Oh, sorry. Maybe I did. It smells more like of a Karwinski now.
Oh, here we go with the scientific name.
Hey, I use it to my advantage.
Yeah, because it's so broad, right? You're like, well, this is somewhat a Karwinski. That's a very broad category. But taking a stab at, Cuiche, Madre Cuiche, Cereal, that's a little bit more specific. I'll give you a hint. It's an ensemble.
Well, I'm getting more of the, I would say Madre Cuiche on it, if we're trying to be specific. And I think it's overproof.
What do you mean? What does overproof mean to you?
More than foolproof. More than
What does foolproof mean to you?
foolproof is 100%. I mean, 50%
Okay.
ABV, 100
Yeah.
proof.
Okay.
That's foolproof.
Okay.
And so I'm guessing this is
Over that.
51 or 52%, maybe a little bit more even. I don't know. I let's see if I can get a second agave.
Don't overthink it.
No, it would be a rare combo, but I want to say a marmorata in there.
You get well. So I'm curious, and the disclaimer is I don't think tasting notes are just as much as scientific names. I don't think tasting notes are a very important thing to consider when consuming mezcal and really understanding and appreciating when you're drinking. But what about that makes you think marmorata or tepestate?
The thing is, for me, it's kind of become a bit of like a muscle memory. I don't have my tasting notes.
Yeah.
Like,
and I
similar
don't
to what
care
you-
about the tasting.
It's
notes.
just
I'm
like this.
curious,
This
is there
is
something about this? That
this
you're
is the
like,
memory
that makes me
of
think. Yeah.
Karwinski for me, and I would say it's like a nutty, floral, even effervescent, boldness on the nose, and then the secondary flavor. And I'm only saying this because you told me it was an ensemble. Otherwise, I would say
Yeah.
Karwinski through and through. But on the finish, I do get more of the herbaceous, green, sort of medicinal finish.
Yeah. Well, your instincts are right. I mean, it's a quiche espadín ensemble. And I think some of those green medicinal notes I have encountered from Karwinski's as well. And so I totally understand like where you're coming from.
Yeah.
This tepestate is fucking delicious though. Yeah.
And truth be told, it was a brand new bottle, so I haven't actually tried it. It's just I don't know, the marmorata that I
It's killer.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the question I have before we reveal the bottles is we talked about what you thought this was, and you were on par with thinking Karwinski. It's a quiche espadín ensemble. But the real question that I think matters more than what tasting notes do you get or what agave do you think this is do you like it?
I loved it.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
It is what matters. That is absolutely what matters. And I think it helps us to know the scientific names of the
Okay,
agaves
hold on.
that we
Shut up.
loved,
Oh,
so that we
let's
can
see
go
the
to the
bottles.
store and get them again and find them.
We'll get there. Let's see the fucking bottles.
Fred first or Chuey?
Either one.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
bring the one that I've tried first.
Oh.
a ensemble from Benito Garcia Lopez, Quiche Espadin, distilled on copper, only 215 liters, 50.25%.
So you
Slightly
were
overproof.
literally by 1/4%.
Yeah,
You were correct in that it is over foolproof.
yeah,
Right.
Well, there's something
because
about it.
it's 100.08%.
Yeah,
Or it's 100.08 proof. And Fred made the contention earlier that it tasted overproof, which he defined as over 100 proof.
it's not my definition.
And so
it's the definition.
by less than 1%, Fred was right. I just want to point that out for everybody.
So it's not always bullshit that I'm spewing.
I think it was a lucky guess, is what it was. But so the disclaimer is selfish plug. This is Mezcal Vago, Pacific Northwest Agave Club, exclusive pick, 219 liters. Is that what you said?
215 maybe.
215 liters of a batch from Benito Garcia, who is the younger brother of the founding producer of Mezcal Vago, Aquilino Garcia. May he rest in peace. And I had the privilege of personally selecting this batch while in Oaxaca in April. And this released just a couple of months ago here in Oregon. The disclaimer for the audience, our producers asked us to bring a bottle today that was for the holidays. That's all they said, like bring a holiday bottle. And so my shameless plug is that there are still bottles of this available exclusively at 11th Avenue Liquor here in Portland. And I think it makes a great gift, a great bottle to share at holiday gatherings. And you heard from Fred, he fucking loves it. So if he loves it and I love it, you'll probably love it too.
2 thumbs up.
All right.
Okay, next bottle.
Lucky duck.
Rey Campero.
Oh well, let me.
So you realize why this is important, right? That you brought this and I brought this. What is the connection between these two bottles, Fred? Do you know?
The connection. I mean, they're both produced in Oaxaca.
Okay, but more than that.
I can't say that I know what connects them.
So, to my understanding, anyway, I could be wrong, but from my understanding, Mezcal Vago, specifically now, bottles from Hijos de Aquilino or from Benito Garcia, and bottles from Rey Campero are the only two commercially available mezcal bottles in the United States from Yegolé, Candelaria in Oaxaca.
Wow.
So these two bottles were actually produced in the same municipality
Cool.
by two different producers.
So they bottle exclusively from those villages, from that village.
Yeah, so Rey Campero is not like an independent bottler. They bottle exclusively from the family that they work with there in
It's
Yegolé.
a distillery.
Yeah.
It's a distiller-owned brand.
Yeah. And then Mezcal Vago has bottles that are from all over Oaxaca. They work with 4 main producers, or 5 if you can count Benito. But the founding producer, Aquilino, and then now that he's passed away, the Hijos de Aquilino and his younger brother, Benito, still produce in Yegole.
Cool.
So, I think it's pretty cool that we randomly, independently selected bottles for each other this year, right?
From Yegole.
But from the same municipality in Oaxaca, which there's only 2 brands from that are commercially available.
I agree. I mean, that is interesting. The reason is a little bit different.
Absolutely.
I chose this bottle because I think, for me, Tepestate is a specifically special agave because of how long it takes to mature, often between 18 plus years.
What kind of agave is it?
Agave Marmorata, scientifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you said Tepestate for some reason.
Well, I did because that's how it's labeled.
Right. Why?
Well, it's also labeled Agave Marmorata.
Yeah, but which one's bigger?
Well, the font for Tepestate is larger.
Yeah. And does size matter?
It depends on the context. So, I don't know what you're getting at, Chewy.
What does your instinct tell you?
That this bottle is good for gifting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because it's a private batch pick. And so this pick, this bottle specifically produced by Ramiro Sanchez Altamirano, was distilled in May of 2018. It's a private batch pick from Madre Mezcaleria in Los Angeles by Ivan Vasquez himself, the founder. And for the holidays, just like your bottle, I think it's nice to find something that is special, that's not so widely available, that is either something like an ensemble or a smaller batch. You said 215 liters. This one was only 600 bottles.
Yeah.
So
small.
Not that much bigger. So micro batches really relative to like the small batch category. And you can't find this, I don't think, anymore. But the point is
this
that
an
it's
old pick?
I've had this bottle since 2020.
Maybe it is an old pick.
And it's from 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will put the plug out there as well, since I did plug where you can pick up the Vago. If you're in LA, obviously you can contact Ivan and go to Madre and see if he has a bottle. If you're not in LA, go madreshop.com. Ivan does ship bottles across the country. And so I don't know if there's more available, since you said this pick's probably from 2020. But if there is, I'm sure it would be available through Go Madre Shop.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're welcome.
It's delicious. And so the other thing is, you said this pick's from 2020. It was probably distilled in 2018. Distilled in May of 2018. You bought it in 2020. It's now the end of 2025, and so I think I also get to appreciate the fact that this has been rested in glass for a while.
Yeah. And anyone else obviously would too.
Yeah.
So what else you got, Chewy? Are we agreeing here then that the scientific name is really the most valuable component of
I don't recall ever saying that.
the
most valuable component? Are you really contending that? Like, I don't diminish the fact that you're contending it's important, and I don't disagree with that. There is importance to understanding the scientific categorization of agave, and specifically for some people more than others. But to use your own words, is it the most important?
It depends on what we are controlling for, right?
Run me through it.
Well, what are the priorities, right?
What's your priority?
Well, my priorities are biased as an importer, full disclosure. Okay?
Sure. Okay, share them.
My priorities are that our producers remain in control and in full possession of their agave fields, right? and that they have full rights and ownership over their assets with regards to whatever brands that they are producing for and working for, and own the means of production. We're seeing a lot of American and or celebrity owned brands coming in and buying up real estate, um, jumping through all kinds of loopholes to to buy up these lands and plant monocrops of agave angustifolia, right? And just make espadín for days and days and flood the market. Now, those priorities aren't necessarily what the everyday consumer, cares about, and I acknowledge that. And perhaps for your everyday, maybe casual mezcal drinker, an aficionado even, the priority might be conservation of some of these wild agaves that they have yet to discover and or taste and experience for themselves. And so to that end, these these scientific names, I think, will go a long way to that preservation. Again, if those scientific names are not real knowledge that are codified, then there's really no way to legally protect them. And if you're thinking about the industry at large, what's the priority? I mean, the prices are down, and that, I mean, it's totally skewed. I wouldn't even know what their priorities are. Probably that more celebrities got in the game so that you know um, demand went up and prices went down.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
no, demand goes up, the prices go up. I don't know.
yeah, less, supply and demand, right? Less supply, higher demand, um, is going to lead to an increase in prices.
Right.
Um, and I'm not sure how it applies to agave across the board. But I know, like, specifically in Jalisco and with the tequila industry specifically, right? There's currently an oversupply of agave, um, which is leading to agave prices
Dropping.
plummeting. All right, like, what, 3 years ago you were paying 30 to 35 kilos or pesos a kilo for agave. You're now paying 2 to 5 pesos a kilo.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like a significant drop, right? And when we think about that through, like,
Okay, but
the lens, I don't want to
stay on that point though. Stay on that point. I think this is good. I think that's good. But who is that to the detriment of? Not the producers.
No, to the agaveros, and more so, I think, in tequila production than in any other type of agave spirit. There is a distinction a lot of times for producers of tequila and agaveros, or the agave farmers. While there are some brands and some producers that own their own tequila field or their own agave fields and use those fields exclusively to produce their tequila. In tequila, there's also a lot of independent agaveros or agave farmers who then sell their product to distilleries or tequila producers in order to produce tequila. And so 3 years ago, agave farmers were making great margins, right? Because there was a huge demand for their product and a low supply. Now it's reversed. There's a lower demand for the product because there's a huge supply, more supply than the industry needs. And that means the price is plummeting, and it means that producers can be more selective about the agaves that they choose to purchase, which for agave farmers is detrimental. It's impacting communities. There's agave farmers committing suicide over the debts that they owe because they see no path to recovery, which is a huge issue.
Yeah,
For the
not heard about
actual quality of the tequila being produced, it's actually a good thing because producers are able to buy higher quality agaves that are older. They're not pulling agaves out of the ground as fast as they used to. And so the actual quality of the product is going up while the people responsible for the production of it and the growing of the agaves, which I consider part of the production, are suffering.
Wow. I had not heard of any magalleros committing suicide. And I'm sorry for whoever you heard about. That's terrible. I mean, it's heartbreaking. The industry has been so promising and continues to show tremendous growth. The hard part about that is that it's fairly one-sided, and that growth purely lies sort of in the power of the pocketbook of the American consumer. I mean,
Sure.
American consumers are something like 60 to 70% of global demand
Right.
for agave spirits.
Yeah.
And that's wild. I mean,
It is, yeah.
it's a market you really cannot ignore. And with the economic political climate in the States these days, it's hard to predict anything. So I don't know really what the message can be to consumers that want to help, sort of remedy that that issue.
I think it's a balance, and I'm speaking from my knowledge of the tequila industry specifically. But this like high and low when it comes to the price of agave, the supply and demand for agave, it's not a new concept or a new problem, right?
No.
This has been something going on for generations, is that there's highs and there's lows, right? There's times of an oversupply of agave prices are plummeting, people are burning fields of agave, they're harvesting agave at 2-3 years old to feed to cows and other like farm animals because they know that it won't be valuable enough for them to have the ROI that they need for it if they let it go to full maturity. Um, and there's historically been times like we just recently experienced where the supply of agave is low, and the price is high. Um, and so it continues to be a problem. And realistically, I wish, and I know that the government is not always helpful, but I would wish that for as much as as Mexico exports agave spirits, tequila, mezcal, and otherwise, outside of the country, not just the United States, obviously the United States the most, but to other countries as well, that maybe the Mexican government would play a more active role in subsidizing or sustaining long-term agave, right? Like it would be great to have some kind of like equality brought in or stabilization brought into the agave market through government subsidization when needed, because agave is such an important crop to the country of Mexico. That's obviously my perspective as an American consumer. But yeah, I mean, it's an issue. But I think at this point in our conversation, it's time for the caminera. And so,
well, wait, before we get to that, I want to say thanks. I think that's a really great idea, and I bet if any administration in the perhaps recent history of Mexico, this one might be open to it.
yeah. So in case this podcast reaches Madam President of Mexico, you now know Chuey and Fred's perspective on what you should do for the agave industry.
Saludcitas.
Salud.
Man, how much of that bottle are you gonna drink there, Chuey?
Well, as the one who selected this bottle and the founder and president of the Pacific Northwest Agave Club, I happen to have access to more of that mezcal specifically.
Oh, I thought you were drinking. What is it?
No, I for my third pour, I know you're only on your second. I'm on my third. My third pour, I went to the Vago.
Is this really my second?
Yeah.
Damn. Oh, what's the caminera?
La Caminera, and which I think is really just closing thoughts, and I'm happy to go first. Scientific names have their value, right? I don't disagree with your contentions about the importance of preserving specific species of agave that might be endangered, and the fact that understanding and knowing those scientific species make that easier. My contention is to the average consumers, to the people watching this podcast. Stop getting so caught up in what the scientific categorization of what you're drinking is, and just fucking drink it. Enjoy it. Try to understand the people, the culture, and the tradition behind the production, and you can understand the scientific categorization later. If you have the privilege, which I hope all of you do, of visiting producers and in agave spirit production, whether that's tequila, mezcal, or otherwise across Mexico, shut up and listen, because you will learn so much more that way than if you tried to guide the conversation by the questions that you have.
I love that. Buena caminera. Closing thoughts on my end are simply that I think what Chuey shared about common names, etymology of those names, and what they can help us learn about the cultures and traditions in those regions are beautiful. And it is a privilege to get to know and experience that firsthand. And then lastly, that is, I think that the common names that we learn about have gotten us to where we are in the mezcal category. And the scientific names are the future of the agave spirits category.
Do I get a rebuttal to that?
Well, they'll protect the future of the agave spirits category.